Hello everyone, my name is Riya and today in this video I'll be explaining how to do the IP addressing and subnetting. So first of all, let me tell you what an IP address is. IP address is basically a numerical label which is assigned to each and every device on a network. So the main function of an IP address is for local addressing and another one is for host identification. So there are two types of IP addressing. One is IPv4 addressing and another one is IPv6 addressing. So here there are some questions which I'll be explaining how to solve them. So the first question, which you can all see, the number of needed subnets are 3 and the number of needed usable hosts is 45 and the network address is given, that is 200.175.14.0. So from the network address itself we can understand that this address belongs to class C. So for class C we know that the range is from 192 to 223. So the default subnet mask would be 225.255.255.255.0/24 and because in this question we need the subnets is, the needed subnets is 3, so since we need 4 subnets, so we need to borrow 2 bits from the host portion and we know that the default subnet mask is /24. So there are 24 bits in the host portion, network portion, and 8 bits in the host portion. So since the total number of subnets that is required is 4, so we need to borrow 2 bits from the host portion. So the remaining number of bits in the host portion would be 6. And since the total number of subnets we need is 4, so if we borrow 2 bits from the host portion, so the possible combinations would be 2 power 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0 and 1, 1. And since the number of bits remaining in the host portion is 6, so the total number of host address would be 2 power 6, that is 64. And out of which the first address will be the network address and the last address would be the broadcast address. So the remaining number of usable host addresses will be 62. So that is what is asked over here. And so we know that the number of bits that we had borrowed was 2, and we have got a table over here which we have to fill. Now since the total number of subnets that we have obtained is 4, and out of which we have to write any three subnets over here. So we know that between each subnet there will be a gap of 64 bits. So we can see that the first network address is 200.175.14.0 and the second subnet is 200.175.14.64 and the third subnet is 200.175.14.128. Now if we see the first valid host address, so it would be 200.175.14.1 and the last valid host address will be 1 less than the broadcast address. So the broadcast address will be the last address, which is 200.175.14.63 and the last valid host address will be 200.175.14.62. So similarly we are supposed to write for all the 3 subnets, that is subnet 1, subnet 2 and subnet 3. And we have some more questions over here. Now for this question, if we see, the number of needed subnets is 10 and we can see that the network address which is given is 172.59.0.0 and seeing the network address we can recognize that it belongs to class B. Now since it belongs to class B, the default subnet mask would be 255.255.0.0 and /16. Now since we need 10 subnets, so we have to borrow 10 bits from the host portion, and so the default subnet, now the custom subnet mask becomes /20 and the total number of subnets will be 16 and the total number of host addresses will be 2 power 12. So out of which the number of usable host address will be 2 power 12 minus 2 and we had borrowed 4 bits. So here we have to write the subnet 1, subnet 2, subnet 9 and subnet 10. So similarly we'll be writing how we wrote for question number 1. And we have another question, that is number of needed usable hosts is 50 and the network address is 172.59.0.0. Here we see that the class address is, the class which this address belongs to is B, and the default subnet mask is 255.255.0.0, and after borrowing 10 bits you can see that the subnet mask has changed to /26, and the total number of subnets will be 2 bar 10 and the number of usable host address will be 2 bar 6 minus 2. And so similarly we have to fill the network addresses for all the for writing the subnet for all the subnets is not possible, because there are the total number of subnets will be 2 bar 10. So we'll be writing only for the first one, the second one and the last one. And the next question is, you can see a topology diagram which is given over here, and this topology diagram consists of a WAN and 3 LANs. So the first LAN belongs to marketing department, and marketing department requires 24 hosts in this case, and the second LAN belongs to research department which needs 60 hosts, and third one is management which requires 15 hosts. So since first of all we have to see which is the department which requires maximum number of hosts. So in this case we can see that research requires maximum number of hosts, that is 60, right? So we have to see how many bits we are supposed to borrow, how many bits we are. The research department requires 60 hosts, so we have to borrow 2 bits from the host portion. So after we borrow 2 bits from the host portion, the remaining bits will be 6. So when the remaining bits is 6, so the number of host addresses will be 2 bar 6, that is 64, and the number of usable host addresses will be 2 bar 6 minus 2, that is 62. Now if we give this to the research department, so the number of hosts that will be, number of addresses that will be wasted would be very less, and this will be efficient. And so now we have obtained 4 subnets, that is which is at a gap of 64, and we can give each subnet we can give to either marketing and management, but marketing requires only 24 hosts and management requires only 15 hosts. So if we give any one of these subnets to these departments, so the remaining network addresses would be wasted, and that is why what we have to do is we have to take any one of these subnets, any one of the 4 subnets, and divide it into 2. And once it is divided into two, one of them can be assigned to marketing department and the other can be assigned to the management department. And since for the link between 2 routers we need only 2 hosts, so we are supposed to borrow 1 more bit. We don't have to borrow 1 more bit, we have to borrow 6 more bits, so that in the host portion only 2 bits will be remaining, and so we'll be getting 2 usable host addresses. Now out of the 2 usable host addresses, we can assign network address to these link between the routers easily. So for marketing, the network address is 196.34.20.32, and for research it is 196.34.20.64, and similarly we have to write the first valid host address for this one, that is 196.34.20.33, and the last valid host address is broadcast address -1. So since the broadcast address is 196.34.20.63, so the last valid host address will be 196.34.20.62. Similarly, we have written for the other departments. Thank you. That's all for this video. Thank you.